Hello, welcome to EPG Pathshala. The module that we would be discussing now is energy sources in surgery. Now, giving the introduction about this topic, the fact remains is that multiple instruments, gadgets, techniques are used in surgery. Energy sources and their base devices are one of them. Rather, they are one of the most common devices used in surgery. The way they act is they either cut, coagulate, or even sometimes ablate the tissue. And again, they are one of the most commonly regularly used devices, be it open surgery or laparoscopic surgery. The spectrum of these devices is very vast and exhaustive. What we would be discussing in this module are one of the most commonly used instruments in the surgical practice. Their principles are based on biophysics, the temperature that they achieve and the reaction of the tissue to that temperature. What they do is they make our surgery more comfortable, faster and cleaner, and hence they allow us surgeons to do more technically superior operations. Now, starting with the topic, the first thing I would like to mention or show you guys is a diagram which is an overview of the function how these electrosurgical devices act. Nearly all, barring one or two like cryotherapy, most of these instruments raise the temperature in the tissue. Now, as the temperature rises, there is a specific tissue reaction. For example, if you can see in the diagram, at 60 degrees there is unraveling of collagen helices. At 70 to 80 degrees there is protein denaturation. When it goes above 100, the intracellular water evaporates. So when, for example, electrosurgical instrument that we use, when the temperature is above 100 degrees centigrade, it cuts the tissue like anything. And when this temperature reaches above 200 degrees centigrade, it completely ablates the tissue and there is eschar formation. Now, most of these devices, as I told you, barring one, follow the same principle as they raise the temperature in the tissue, and we can regulate the temperature by various mechanisms and various techniques by taking the energy density, the time for which we apply this instrument, and the tissue on which we are applying. So, all these characteristics vary from person to person and tissue to tissue. Now, starting with the energy sources, the first thing I would like to discuss is electrical energy. The reason is these are the most commonly used instrument in the operation theatre, rather be it open or laparoscopic, and in these two different things are there. First is electrosurgery and other is electrocautery, and they are many times confused with each other. One thing has to be clear is electrocautery means using the electric current to heat up a metal point and then use that heated metal point on a tissue to cut, to coagulate or ablate that tissue. That is called electrocautery and that is rarely used. What we use are electrosurgery, in which there is a pencil tip cautery. For example, monopolar electrosurgery, which is the most common, is used, and this is touch on the tissue, and that electrical energy creates the elevated temperature in the tissue and then it performs the desired action. They are of two types, one is monopolar electrosurgery and the other one is bipolar electrosurgery. Now, starting with monopolar electrosurgery, now this is one of the most commonly used instrument, as I have stated multiple times. The instrument is also sometimes called as pencil cautery because it's a probe with a single pencil tip like metal tip. Now, what it does, that it connects to the tissue and there is an electrical generator which generates the electricity and it is connected to the probe. That probe touches the tissue and there is another neutral plate which is placed on any large surface area body of the patient, and that's connected right back to the generator. So, this circuit is completed, and when our probe, the narrow tip of the probe, touches the tissue, now that point is the narrowest point of the circuit, and hence that is the point at which there is maximum resistance, maximum temperature elevation, and hence the tip of the probe cuts the tissue. It can be used in various aspects. It can be used for cutting and also coagulating. Here is the diagram which elaborates what I have just said, that we have an electrode probe which is shown by a pencil cautery in the inset, that is connected to an electrosurgical generator, and that is connected back into a neutral plate which is also known as returning electrode. The area of this electrode is large and it is kept in contact with the patient in a large surface area, so it never becomes the point of maximum or even point of resistance. The second thing is called as bipolar electrosurgery. Now, the problem with monopolar electrosurgery was that it was involving whole of human body in a part of circuit. So what if there are implants or electrosurgical instruments otherwise implanted into a person? Also, when we are using monopolar electrocautery, there is lateral spread of current into the tissues and it creates a large thermal spread of temperature. So for areas like brain, where we cannot afford this lateral spread of temperature, monopolar electrocautery is not a good choice. Here we are using bipolar electrocautery. As we can see in the diagram, it's a bi-pronged probe, which when kept on the tissue, the circuit is limited from the tip of the probe to the tissue and again to the other tip of the probe. Another good fact of this probe is that we can mechanically compress the tissue as well as the electric current passes through it. So the coagulation is very good. The downside is it is not very good for cutting of the tissues and it makes the surgical procedure very slow. So after discussing the most common used energy source based devices in surgery, we are coming to the other devices. The first of is sound waves. The first instrument which is based on sound waves is known as harmonic scalpel. As we can see in the inset diagram, it has two limbs. One is just a physical limb. The limb which is in the longitudinal direction, this is the oscillating limb. It oscillates to and fro in the longitude direction for approximately 50 to 100 micrometers. And a piezoelectric crystal uses the electrical energy to convert it into ultrasonic sound waves, which makes the longitudinal movement of the oscillating probe. So what happens is, whenever this instrument grabs a part of a tissue, the oscillating limb moves to and forth so fast that it cuts the tissue. Also, it denatures the protein as the time it is cutting. So it also provides coagulation in the same setting, and that is the main advantage of this device. It cuts and coagulates the tissue in the same setting. Another thing is, in areas in some tissues where there is less protein density, for example like liver, there is lot of water content. So when this oscillating limb comes into contact with it, the water evaporates and there is a mist like mixture of tissue and water which comes out of the tissue. So that is known as cavitation effect. The second, again discussing about the main benefit that I have already mentioned, is in this slide, is cutting and coagulating takes place at the same time. Another benefit is that it is using mechanical energy. The electrical energy itself is not passing through the tissue. So the problems of monopolar cautery that were there, that was of lateral thermal spread or electrical energy spread that were affecting the other implants in the body of a patient, that is not there with harmonic scalpels. Now coming to the another device which is based upon the sound waves, it is known as CUSA, that is Cavitron ultrasonic aspiration device. Now this device has a similar concept. It has a big probe and an oscillating tip on the tip of the probe, which oscillates longitudinally into the range of 300 microns at the frequency of 25 to 35 kilohertz. Now what it does, it is based completely on the cavitation effect that we just discussed in the harmonic. Now the thing is, whenever a very fast oscillating tip hits the tissue with less protein density and high water content, so with the help of cavitation effect, that tissue is dissociated into fragments. It also has a continuous irrigator and suctioner. So what it does, that tissue is fragmented and it is water comes into it and it is suctioned back. The main use of this CUSA device is that in areas where we have to locate structures of high collagen content, for example, the best example given is in that of liver. If we are performing deep liver surgeries, the liver tissue has a lot of water content, but the big vessels which are passing through the liver, the vessels have high collagen content. So when we are operating with CUSA, in such case, in deep liver surgeries, the tissue gets fragmented, gets sucked back, and we are able to delineate the vessels. So it has some specific indications. Similarly, it is also used in areas like brain because of the similar advantages. Here in the next diagram, we can see the structure of a CUSA probe, where we can see there is a big probe which has an electric coil in between and an oscillating tip at the tip of the probe. Also, there are two channels, one is for irrigation and another is for suction. So this whole is a CUSA probe. The third and the last device that we are going to talk about, which is based upon ultrasonic waves, sound waves. Ultrasonic waves are the most commonly used sound waves as an energy source in surgery. Now it is known as extracorporeal shock wave lithotripsy. It is something that most of the people have heard. In this, what we do is, without invading the human body, we focus the sound waves towards stones in the body, most commonly used for renal stones and also for biliary stones. So these sound waves concentrated on a stone break the stone. So the mechanism is, again there is a piezoelectric crystal which convert the electrical energy into sound waves. Then there are multiple reflectors which focus these sound waves towards the human body. All this apparatus is located in a water filled cushion. That water filled cushion is in complete contact with the human body. So the sound waves start to travel in the water and then start to travel in the human body. But when they reach at the surface of stone, there is immediate change of density between the soft tissues of human body and the hard stone, and all the energy of the sound waves is released at the interface of the soft tissue and the hard stone. So there is some phenomenon which is known as compression induced crackling of stones. So this fragments the stone into small pieces and they come out through the natural pathway of our urine or of the biliary system. Again, in the next slide that we can see the diagram which I have all elucidated, the electrode, the piezoelectric crystal, the sound waves, the reflector, the cushion, and how it is getting focused towards a renal stone. The next energy source that we are going to discuss about is electromagnetic waves. Now there is a spectrum of electromagnetic waves which ranges from microwaves in the larger part to visible light to gamma rays based on the wavelength. So the first thing that I would like to discuss is microwaves. Now what microwaves done is a very common principle. A probe, generally it is used to ablate a tissue, completely destroy a part of tissue. So it is used to ablate the cancerous tissues in deep areas like liver, and the curative surgeries for these lesions is surgery. But when they are outside the curative limit, so to palliate the symptoms, these techniques are used. And what we do is we place a probe deep into the tumor and we activate the microwaves, and the microwaves are activated at 2450 megahertz frequency, and they elevate the temperature and they ablate all the tissue around that probe tip. The difference between microwave ablation and radiofrequency ablation is, radiofrequency ablation is based upon electrical current and hence it depends upon the tissue it is ablating. So it is dependent upon the tissue characteristics, whereas microwave ablation do not respect the tissue boundaries, it ablates all the tissue around it. The downside is that the area to which it ablates, the circumferential area, is very less, and hence some of the times multiple probes are required to do the job. The second is radiosurgery. Now it is a very interesting concept which has specifically used for brain lesions, small brain lesions like brain tumors, arteriovenous malformations and whatnot. What we do is, a gamma ray can easily penetrate, the holes are made and a device is made on is worn by the patient, and multiple gamma rays are focused on a single target in brain. The gamma rays easily pierce whole part of the brain, but a single gamma ray does not cause much problem to the part of the brain it is traveling to. But when these over 200 rays which are commonly used are targeted towards a single target, that single target is ablated. So without completely ablating, without doing open surgeries, we can ablate small lesions in the deep part of the brains with the help of radiosurgery. Newer coming techniques like CyberKnife are all based on this technique only. Now another energy source that we need to discuss about is laser. Now laser is something which is very interesting. Its full form is light amplification by stimulated ray of emission. Now what stimulated means, when a photon hits an electron with multiple intensity, it gets charged and sometimes it emits two photons together. So the electrons are stimulated. So what happens is, there is a medium in between and it is electrically stimulated. So much so that majority of the atoms in that medium are stimulated and they start releasing photons in all directions. On one side there is kept a completely reflecting mirror, on the other side there is kept a partially reflecting mirror. So what it does, all the photons that are coming out of it, they get completely reflected from this side, they get partially reflected from this side, the rays of photons get built up, and from partially transferable mirror, the single collimated beam of photons comes out. So this is the whole mechanism of a laser. So a power of laser can be calculated by the irradiation, and that depends upon the thickness of the beam that is coming out of it and the energy density that is present in the laser. In the next diagram, it is shown whatever I was just telling, that we have a medium which is excited by the electrical power supply so much so that majority of the atoms are stimulated. This is also known as population inversion, and in the end, with the help of completely reflecting mirror and partially reflecting mirror, we are having a collimated beam of photons which can be targeted towards a specific site. Now, how they are used in surgery, it depends upon laser to laser, and all the characteristics of laser are depends upon their wavelength. So in front of you is an image showing one table showing one of the most commonly used lasers in surgery. These are argon, pump dye, Nd:YAG and carbon dioxide. Now, as we can see, their wavelengths are starting from 350 nanometers to up to 10,000 nanometers, and again the effect that they are causing is based on their wavelength. Starting from argon, the absorption chromophore. Absorption chromophore means the component of the tissue that selectively absorbs these rays. So it is pigment in hemoglobin for argon. For example, like Nd:YAG, it is again pigment and proteins. For carbon dioxide is a water, and because water is present in all of the tissues, carbon dioxide is a non-selective laser. The diagram which is shown in the lower part of the presentation, we can see a probe is giving, if you can see clearly, a green light laser. This is a holmium laser breaking renal stones. Now, I have made a category named as others, in which I have characterized other energy source based devices who are loosely or modifiedly based on the concept that we have discussed before, and some of them are having completely different mechanism. So starting with the first is radio frequency ablation. Now, the energy that we were using in cautery also, that was also radio frequency based radio frequency range of electrical energy. What is radio frequency range of electrical energy? This is a range approximately 300 to 50 megahertz, in which the frequency is so high that whenever it is used in the body, the neuromuscular excitation does not take place. So cautery can be used very safely. The similar frequency of energy is also used in radio frequency ablation. Now, in what ablation is used is, a probe is used which is implanted deep into the area of tissue that we need to ablate. Again, electrical energy flows through it in the radio frequency range, and the temperatures are quickly elevated to above 100. As we knew that above 100 the water starts to evaporate and the tissue starts to cut. But this temperature goes up to 121 degrees in some and even higher. So what it does, it locally ablates the tissue. One of the very common indications for radiofrequency ablation is for the palliative treatment of hepatocellular carcinomas in liver. Now the second part is cryotherapy. This has to be mentioned because this is probably one of the only energy source based devices that we are discussing in today's module, where the temperature is lowered rather than rising high. So what it happens is, in this a probe is used on the lesion, for example like mucosal lesion as shown in the figure. So the mucosal lesion, the probe is kept, or even it is used sometimes in hepatocellular carcinomas in liver, where probe is placed into the liver. That is known as interstitial cryotherapy. Now what happens is, in the tip of the probe, liquid nitrogen or sometimes cooled argon gas flows very rapidly, that quickly drops the temperature of a probe to minus 30 degrees or even lower. Now what happens is, instantly the tissue gets crystallized. There is ice crystal formation. The probe is taken out and that crystal slowly and slowly thaws away, and again the tissue gets not exactly ablated, but the tissue disintegrates with the thawing process. There are some negative points associated with this, especially in interstitial cryotherapy, which is used for liver lesions. General anesthesia is required and it is a much invasive technique, especially when we have techniques like radiofrequency ablation for liver lesions. Another part is, when the tissue which has ice crystal formation in it is thawing out, there is a risk of bleeding during that procedure. It is uncommonly used and more commonly used for mucosal lesions as shown in the figure. Now, another topic that I need to discuss and looks very interesting, it looks like a movie, that it is known as argon plasma coagulation. Again, the principle and the concept is based upon electrosurgical principles only. What happens is, there is a probe which is kept at some distance from the tissue, and argon gas flows along the sides of the probes in front of the tissue. Now, as the probe is kept very little distance from the tissue and there is a whole electrosurgical circuit, it becomes a point of maximum resistance and the argon gas flowing between the tissue and the probe ionizes. So what happens is this ionized argon gas conducts electricity. So there is, as we can see, spray of electricity all over the tissue. So as we can see, the most commonly used for argon plasma coagulation is to coagulate surface lesions. For example, which is showing in the picture we are showing is there is something called as gastric antral vascular ectasia, in which there is vascular abrasion into the mucous membrane of the stomach, the antrum of the stomach. So APC is the treatment of choice for this condition. It sprays electrical energy over this lesion. It makes eschar formation on that tissue, and when eschar formation takes place, the electricity does not conduct through it. The electricity spreads peripherally. So it is used to ablate surface lesion. Its penetration is not very deep. It's around 1 millimeter to maximum of 6 millimeters, roughly around 3 millimeters to be average. It is also used for diffuse liver bleeding. Now another concept is photodynamic therapy. It is again a very interesting concept. Now what happens is, it is again based on a modified concepts of laser. Now laser ablates the tissue because it has such an intensity in it. But what if a very light laser is put into a tissue and the tissue contains some pigments which get activated by the laser? So in what happens in this condition is, a photosensitizing material is given intravenously or applied as a cream on the skin, and the target tissue, which is most commonly precancerous lesions, absorb those photosensitizer because of high activity in cancer cells. And when low intensity laser is applied to that tissue, the photosensitizers get activated, there is release of free oxygen radicals, and that destroys the cancer tissue that are selectively having higher types of photosensitizers. This photodynamic therapy is used most commonly in solar keratosis in areas like Australia, where people are getting lots of sunburns. In surgical practice, we are using it for conditions like Barrett's esophagus as shown in the figure. The photosensitizer is given, for example, like porphyrium sodium is given intravenously, and that selectively gets absorbed into the neoplastic tissue that is in the esophagus, and a small laser tipped probe with a balloon around it is put into the esophagus, and laser therapy is given. The neoplastic cells get selectively ablated. So summarizing all of the things that we have discussed up till now, I would like to summarize in few points. To start with, electrosurgical and other energy source based devices are a part and parcel of surgery. What they do is they make the surgery faster, cleaner and safer, and hence they allow us to do more technically challenging surgeries. Out of all these instruments, electrosurgical instrument, especially the monopolar cautery, is one of the most commonly used instruments, and other instruments have their specific indications and uses, and they are used in specific areas. The action that they have on tissues is guided by clear biophysical principles, and hence it becomes imperative that the surgeons using these devices should know that, and also it becomes imperative for the people who are involved in the development and research of the further instruments that would help in surgery. Thank you.